भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Welcome to all of you. Nice to see you this morning. In spite of the residual effects of pandemic and the anxieties and concerns which are still there in the minds of people about what will happen, and therefore a tendency to avoid any gatherings is understandable. But I'm happy that all of you are here. It's a beautiful day out there also. And thus, if we keep our eyes open, and of course the mind also open, we can see how abundantly the grace of Ishvara is showered upon us. This morning in beautiful sunshine, dark blue sky, very lively atmosphere. It was a great joy to be in nature and appreciate the grace, the blessings of Ishvara. It is very important, very fulfilling also, to recognize the grace or favor of Ishvara that we are enjoying. Although there can be a question, Swami, how do you say there is grace of Ishvara in spite of pandemic? How can you say there is grace of Ishvara in spite of so many people suffering? Many people suffered death, and then many other kinds of sufferings were there because of the disease. It looks like Bhagavan is cruel rather than kind, is it not so? When this extent of suffering is imposed upon us, how can we maintain our faith in Ishvara? What is meant by faith or Shraddha or trust in Ishvara or Bhagavan or God is that Ishvara is benevolent, that He is creator, He creates the universe, sustains the universe. All of this is quite evident and easy to accept. This such a vast, beautiful, complicated, wonderful universe could not have been an accident, couldn't have just dropped from the sky. It is an intelligent, deliberate creation, where everything that is in the creation has a place and a role to play, meaning that it is a very intelligent and deliberate creation. A wonderful creation in which things outwardly appear to be different from each other, separate from each other, but there is the thread that in fact connects everything. There is a thread of unity that connects all the apparent diversity. For this we may require the scriptures. It requires teachers to draw our attention. We are not trained, or we have a habit of always focusing attention on problems, focusing attention on what is not right from our standpoint, and concluding that all there is in the universe is suffering. Swamiji, there are no values anywhere, adharma everywhere. Sometimes people complain. But if that was so, then the universe could not have continued. The fact that it continues means that there is something that is the impelling force for the continuation of the universe, which means that there is inherently goodness in the universe. There is this unity in diversity. What we perceive and what we conclude is all the diversity, the disparity, the differences. This is what we see and this is what we think it is. But it requires the scriptures and the teachers to draw our attention to the existing unity or oneness. Like sometimes there is a picture with many, many lines going all around. And what we see at the first sight is nothing but a jumble of lines. Then somebody comes along and tells me, Swamiji, do you see Krishna here? I say, I don't see. Well, I say, it's a jumble of lines. It's all, doesn't make sense to me, it's all confusion. The person points out, Swamiji, do you see the eyes here? Yes, I see. Is the lips here? Yes. So nose here? Yes. Flute here? Yes. Cross legs? Yes. So when someone draws our attention to these various organs or limbs and then shows the Krishna in that totally confused jumble of lines, that what appears to be nothing but a confusion, a jumble of lines with no order, no harmony, no theme, that's all we see. We need someone to point out that there is a very beautiful form in there. And so also with the preoccupation we have in our life. For us what matters is my taxes, my income, my savings, my children, my vacation, my weekends, my dogs and cats. My life seems to be centered upon all this stuff only. And there is no leisure. All these things take up so much of my time and energy that there is no leisure to look beyond these things. To see that Krishna in that confusion of lines, we require a vairagya, dispassion. Where is vairagya, Swami? Well, vairagya. Meaning becoming indifferent to that confusion. When can you see that harmony or beauty? When you become indifferent. Even though your eyes see those lines, but when we become indifferent to those lines or the confusions they apparently create, then we can see the beauty. So in life, looks like a jumble, a confusion, a pandemic, and it's understandable. Even if pandemic is not there, we are quite adept in discovering other kinds of problems. I do not think that life was ever devoid of problems and difficulties and challenges. This was a challenge that was commonly shared by us, therefore it becomes a matter of topic of the talks. But do you think that even when pandemic was not there, oh Swami, life was wonderful. I was so happy those days. Every morning I woke up to such happiness and see sun around and Was it so? If it was so, then you deserve congratulations. I don't think so. Because human mind is capable of creating all the problems where they are not, or interpreting things as nothing but problems and challenges. Because our life has become, we are so centered upon our own small little self that everything happens here becomes magnified. In a painting there also, if you see the whole painting, you'll see some nice harmony, flowers. Look at one spot and then enlarge and magnify that spot, there is nothing but confusion. Thus our life also is nothing but magnification of small little spots that we are, our little ego and our little life is. Our concerns with our dogs and our children and our home and our furniture. Understandable. Even when Ishvara has given everything and much more than what we need, and still these anxieties, the conflicts, they do not seem to disappear. So is it something that Bhagavan has created all this? Has Bhagavan created? We are also creators. All this stuff is created by us. Even this so-called the pandemic also. I do not want to make a sweeping statement, but I am quite sure that it was human creation. It is human greed which created a so-called globalization, with those rapid movement from one end to the other, and soon before you realize this thing spread from here to there. Now they were showing, the lines in America itself, from just Florida itself, how many flights are going to what all locations. And these Florida people did not put any restrictions there about how unrestrictedly the disease traveled. Now we can blame the disease. We can blame the government for not putting some restraints. But then, maybe 100 years ago when there were no flights, this could not have happened. There's something that originates in a place, some remote place in China, it just goes all over the world in no time before you even realize. This is called globalization. Nothing wrong with global, but there is globalization also of disease and you know. So even though we can complain to Ishvara about what you have done, in all of this we also have to see whether we have also some contribution. Our life, what kind of life it has become, which seems to be in some way nourishing this confusion and suffering. See, we started talking about Ishvara and His benevolence, His grace. And then came the question of how do you say Swamiji Ishvara is kind and benevolent? Look at all the suffering. But any kind of suffering that is in the world is the creation of human being. Ishvara created a beautiful world and gave it to us. Gave a beautiful environment. But our greed, the industrial revolution was good, the economic revolution was good, but when it gives us more and more and more and more, and we keep on exploiting further and further, and so thoughtlessly we did, we essentially destroyed the environment. Anyway, what I am saying is that not only Ishvara is a creator, but we, the jivas, are also creators. He is the creator of the universe, and we are the creators of all problems. Human being, no doubt, has given a great contribution in terms of scientific development, etc. But then, at the same time, all those things that are meant as the blessing have been turned into curse by us. You know why I'm saying, I don't know why I'm saying all this. What I'm saying is that we don't, you know, our faith in Ishvara is shaken up by all these happenings. How can Bhagavan do this? How can He create this suffering for us? What sort of God is He who has created this pandemic and because of this? So that's why I'm saying it's not only God alone creating, but God has given us the free will also to create. The rest of the environment has no free will, therefore they all maintain harmony. If there was no human being on this planet would be green and fantastic. I think many of us saw the pictures of rivers, lakes, oceans, forests after several months of lockdown, when the human activity was essentially arrested. Look at the Ganga, look at the Yamuna, look at the rivers, look at the mountains, they were all smiling. They all felt freedom from the torture by the human beings. And that is the nature of nature. What we see is what the human being has done. And we immediately forget this was a wonderful lesson. But no sooner the pandemic is gone, we are on our way, we begin with our old ways. We do not seem to learn and grow. When the petroleum crisis came, people became very conscious. They started avoiding driving. They were small cars, and there were ideas of new architecture and walking to work and saving the energy. For a few years, when I came back after 10 years, it was the same thing. Gas guzzling cars, huge trucks. truck-like cars, SUVs, etc. People are back, meaning that our tendency to indulge shows up, and by that indulgence we keep on consuming much more than what we need. Human being has become a consumer. Consumer means who keeps on swallowing much more than what he needs. There is enough in the universe to fulfill the need of the human being, but not enough to fulfill the greed of the human being. Ishvara cannot fulfill our greed. And therefore, how by our indulgences, our thoughtlessness, our self-centeredness, we have created suffering in the universe. Otherwise, Ishvara has given us a very beautiful universe to enjoy. Like Adam and Eve, in a beautiful thing, and then some apple, I don't know the story, but that's how things started. Symbolically. Again, why am I saying all this? To point out that Ishvara is nothing but blessing, nothing but benevolence, nothing but grace. Why am I saying that? So that we do not lose faith in our life. That in spite of whatever confusion or conflict appears on the surface, in the core there is harmony. In spite of all the evil that may appear on the surface, in the core there is goodness. So goodness is a reality of life, not evil. Harmony is a reality of life, not conflict. Although what draws our attention is conflict, what is publicized by the media is only conflict. So we think that's what the world is, but that's not so. If only conflict existed in the world could not survive. So just to draw our attention, that in spite of what appears and what we are made to believe by the media and by whatever it is, there is inherent goodness, inherent grace in our life. And we should recognize that and have a sense of gratitude. Gratitude is a great value in life. Sense of gratitude. That gratitude is, it automatically manifests from ourselves. When we recognize what all favor is done to us without asking. The children recognize only when they grow up what all the parents have done for them. At that time their sense is not there. At that time they are all demanding. Not only demanding, complaining and controlling and having their way. Later on we recognize what all the mother has put up with. How much sacrifice has been made to raise a child. Child doesn't have the maturity to appreciate that. Just takes for granted. What is given is simply taken for granted. When that child becomes mother or father, then it knows what it means to be that. So God is mother also, by the way. Very loving and nourishing. And as I said, it requires somebody to draw our attention to that. Just as in the confusion of those lines, we needed somebody to point out a beautiful Lord Krishna in there, a beautiful figure. So also it requires someone to help us, make us recognize that care and nourishment that is there everywhere in the universe. Unfortunately, we think that human being is only inhabitant of the universe, that's all. We think that human being is only inhabitant, we are in absolute minority. There are more mosquitoes than human beings perhaps in the world. And when we complain about anything, we think that Bhagavan, Ishvara is supposed to do this, but no, you are not the only one. The parents should take care of all children, is it not so? One selfish child wants everything for himself or herself. That's how we are. We are not the only living beings. We are a great minority. Ishvara takes care of many, countless other beings. Is it not so? We can see how he takes care. Our Khandani Swami was saying that this young man who grew up in a forest did not know even the basic realities of life. And then when there was a woman who was a maid servant, became pregnant, and this boy saw how her organs were slowly developing and how everything was ready when the child, the milk was being made ready for the child before it is born. Most amazing. That how the preparation is there, the care is there for every living being. And so for human being also. What's the difference? Difference is the other living beings are not demanding. They are accustomed to and satisfied, content with what is given to them. Human being is not content with what is given to him. He wants more and more and more because there is greed. There is indulgence. See, there is no greed anywhere else other than human beings. No indulgence anywhere in living beings other than human beings. No violence anywhere. You may say, Swamiji, there is violence everywhere, but that is violence that is required for sustenance. Jivo jivasya jivanam. Meaning that one living being depends on other living being. That's how the creation is. Therefore we find that living beings take life of other living beings for their survival, but nothing more than necessary. And that also is to sustain that cycle, of creation, sustenance, dissolution. Human being only consumes much more than what he needs and wastes a lot of things. All these adds up in pandemics. I'm not a scientist, but I'm sure that someday they will understand how our indulgence, how the wasteful habits has necessitated all this creation and manufacturing because we want more and more. And that's how so-called globalization has come. All of this is good to have. It's all only to sustain the greed and indulgence of human beings. Is it not so? In fact, they create desires in us by tempting us, creating temptation. They create desires for consumption because that's how they will thrive. The human being is living life based on the wrong principle of being a consumer. He thinks they have a right to exploit, consume, feed my belly. Meaning that we are living life based on wrong principles. And any kind of suffering anywhere is a result of this. Because when I consume more than what I need, I'm going to deprive you of your need, and then you're going to react in some way. What I'm saying, in spite of what appears to be this conflict and suffering, which we may see in the human society. Understand, the human society is not the only society in the universe. Everywhere else there is harmony. Unless we interfere, which we are doing. We are interfering with the life of other creatures also, and creating scarcity for them and suffering for them. That also we are doing. But not how Ishvara has created. That we saw in the pandemic after the lockdown, Ishvara's creation. I never realized that the river can be so beautiful. That Yamuna river in Delhi is just a sewage canal actually. You could see clear, clean water flowing there. The Ganga, they all breathed a sigh of relief from the torture of the human being. The forests and the parks and rivers and lakes and mountains. Because the destroyer was locked up. The consumer and destroyer was locked up. And so real beauty became evident. So that is the reality. What we see is a distorted reality, which we have distorted because of our habit of consumption. The greed, indulgence, consumption. What I'm saying, don't blame God. That's the purpose of saying all of this, is that let us not blame Ishvara. Let us not lose faith in Ishvara, in His benevolence. Well, the pandemic may be a blessing in disguise. If we learn the lesson, but I don't think we will. The memory is very short. This kind of memory is very short. So for a while it may perhaps influence our lifestyle, etc. And then we'll be back to the rut, to the old ways. So I think Bhagavan does this from time to time to open our eyes. First we learn some lessons so that we can understand what but we don't see that. It's all done by China, by X, Y, Z. Somebody has done, some animals in the forest, and from there, it's all scientific things are there. But no philosophy in there. Philosophy is that we have done it in some way or the other. Why should something happening in the animal meat market in China should spread, Why are we eating that stuff anyway? Isn't there enough of vegetables and things given that you'd eat all this kind of stuff? And that is, if they don't eat, nothing will happen. Lots of these pandemics originated in China and Africa. That's where people eat this stuff. To what level you can go? Even animals don't eat those things sometimes. What do we expect? Well, we can't expect the world to learn anything from that, but if we can learn to make our life as simple and as non-demanding as we can. It is compulsion, indulgence that is doing all the damage. Enough has been provided by Ishvara for fulfilling our needs. But then this is called greed, where fulfilling a need is like pouring butter into fire, and that's why those needs they grow and become more intense. So at least we can recognize what the problem is. It's a philosophical problem, not a scientific problem. Science comes later. First, everything happens here in terms of wrong thinking, wrong conclusions, wrong habits. Science can never find this. Regardless. So, we can learn the lesson as to how to make our life as non-demanding, as less consuming, as less wasteful. The food that is wasted in the United States can feed several countries. It can feed millions of people who are hungry around the world. There are millions of poor people who go to bed or go to sleep without food, who do not know where the next meal is going to come from. Who cares? No, Swamiji, we are very charitable, we supply them this. Yeah, but charity begins at home. Stop, minimize consumption. And consumption also involves waste. I'm sure there is a very beautiful meal waiting for us, but I hope how much waste is going to, I do not know. Because our hosts are very generous. They always want to give more than what you can eat, and they always provide for more than what number of people are involved. Because you have plenty. What does it matter? It doesn't matter to us maybe, but it matters to many others. And through this, so we can become thus conscientious people, recognizing how what one individual does has a little wave effect in the whole universe. It is not visible, therefore we don't see. Swami, suppose I change, what does it matter? The world will remain the same. So this story you must have heard. Once a young man went to a beach, an old man went to a beach and saw a young man picking up something from the beach. The tide had just come and receded, throwing back into the ocean. The old man is surprised. What is this fellow doing? He went near him. What the young man was doing was picking up crabs, because they were swept along with the tide, and then the tide receded, they were all left, and they will ultimately die without water. So this young man picked up. The old man says, what are you doing? This is stupid. Your picking a few crabs will make no difference. There are countless crabs here. So if you have picked up one, it makes a difference to this, he says, That's all we can do as far as our contribution is concerned. That every little thing adds up. So from this pandemic, we learn this kind of lesson, that it is the consumption of human being ultimately that has contributed to this, that is sponsor or cause of this. Scientifically caused maybe some animals, and something transmitted, a virus transmitted from animal to human being through some meat markets, and maybe. But then I'm sure there were like this kind of viruses 100, 200 years ago, and then did not spread. All we can do is what we can do. By minimizing our consumption, making ourselves as less demanding as we can, as less consuming as we can, as less indulging as we can. Difficult. But anyway, every little thing can make a difference. When you switch off a light, that much difference. Turn on the tap, little difference. Turn off the tap. All those little things we can do to save the environment, save the natural resources, and save food, save whatever we can. That will be Ishvara's service. That is called Seva done to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is maybe there in heaven, all right, but what is Bhagavan after all? As Vedanta teaches, what is Ishvara? You must have heard that statement. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. What is Brahman? Ishvara in this form. And therefore, whatever we do in this manner, a little bit contribution helps somebody somewhere, if not right away here, some in Ethiopia something may be helped, in what we do here. A little more food is available there. That means they will serve Ishvara in that form. Whatever little service we can provide, whatever little contribution we can make, ultimately reaches Ishvara in some form or the other. It may not be a human being. It may be an animal, some other creature. It may be a tree, plant, earth. So, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. By worshipping Ishvara, by one's own karma, one gains perfection. One gains success, siddhi. Who doesn't want success? But then the Bhagavad Gita gives a different definition of success. We have our own understanding of what success is, in terms of wealth or power, etc. But Lord Krishna explained that success is in the form of the inner wealth. There is the material wealth which we require, no doubt. What they call Ishvara, Lord Krishna, the divine wealth, Daivi Sampat. So if wealth is equated to success, there is a fleeting wealth and there is a abiding, sustained wealth. The wealth that we acquire in terms of virtues, the goodness, is a sustaining wealth which will never leave us. And it's not only a blessing to ourselves, but then becomes a blessing to everybody else around. So that is the definition of success that the Bhagavad Gita gives. How to attain that success? Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. Worshipping Ishvara by one's own karma, man attains perfection. What Ishvara? What worship? This? Just take a crab, throw it into the ocean. What difference does it make? Makes difference to that little thing. So what difference can I make, Swamiji? To an ant? To a mosquito? To somebody? What is important is the spirit with which we do. How much we do is second dimension, but this whole attitude. So this brings about an inner transformation. We are the first beneficiary of this. When you perform actions in that spirit, then there are those beneficiaries are there for whom the action is performed. But the first beneficiary is the one who performs that action. The one who has that attitude. So, of course, we are all mothers, but that's the most great privilege. And mother's job is what she's naturally nourisher. The nourishment can be extended a little bit. Because a nourisher requires nourishment. A tree nourishes us, but tree also requires nourishment, isn't it? A woman nourishes, but she also requires nourishment. People sometimes don't recognize that. So Ishvara also is a nourisher, he also requires nourishment. Bhagavan requires nourishment, yes. If you read these Puranas, like Ramayana, etc., Bhagavatam, these demons such as Ravana, You know what he would do? He would stop all the religious rituals and all the yajnas, he would stop that. Meaning that he would send his army and stop all the homas that are being performed by the sages. Because when you perform that homa, a yajna, you make an offering to fire. You're not throwing something away into fire. In the fire, a devata is invoked, and therefore it is an offering done to devata. That's how devatas would be nourished and they would gain their strength. So what Ravana would do? How to weaken the devatas? Stop their food? Stop this process of offering? And so Ravana's messengers will go and stop all activities of, yajna, yaga, dana, etc. Devatas weaken, you attack them, conquer them. So devatas also depend upon us for nourishment. And so in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantuvaha. By your actions you nourish the devatas. So devata is the form of the nature, devata is all the natural forces and everything is there. Everybody is devata. All living beings, even inert things are also nothing but devata. They all need nourishment, is it not so? A river also needs nourishment, a mountain also needs nourishment. If we do not interfere, then there is enough scheme in the nature to nourish, but then we interfere, so we now have to do the, nourishment. Any small act of nourishment is nourishing Devata, so that nourishing Ishvara. He is nourisher, so he also needs to be nourished. Devan bhavayatanena te devaha bhavayantuvaha parasparam bhavayanta Shreyah param avapsyatha. O human beings, may you nourish and nurture and propitiate the devatas in the form of this nature, and nature will give you bounty and nourish you. When we damage them, then you also get damaged in turn, is it not so? So what is damage happening, what damage is happening in human society may be traced damage that we have caused and we are causing. In what form the damage comes, you don't know. That may require not only scientists but some philosophers to trace this thing, but this is damage that comes to us, What I say may not sound scientific, like superstitious, Swami. You're talking like a superstitious person. But the law of karma, law of cause and effect, always works. As you sow, so you reap. So that's the kind of lesson we can learn, and we can bring about some change or transformation in our life. That's all we can do. And that much difference we can make. If we want to make a difference, that much difference we can make. But remember that Ishvara is always benevolent. Sometimes the mother also is not always kind, Mothers also become this. That is Devi always has two forms. Is it not so? She can become ferocious, she can become a Kali. That's what mother also. But she needs to do that. So sometimes Bhagavan also does that. A ferocious form to destroy the demons. But still stays mother. And she is kind even in her cruelty. Even mothers here also must have been it is necessary to become cruel to the children. Children are small, you need to administer medicine to them. And we are always given Ayurvedic medicines when we feel sick, and that was always a very bitter medicine. And no child wants to take that medicine. When you see the mother reaching out for medicine cabinet, you run away from there. She's not going to leave you. She'll chase you, catch hold of you. Don't cooperate, put her in her lap. Don't cooperate, press your hands and legs. Don't cooperate, close your nose, open the mouth, and in most cruel manner pour that medicine. Mom, I hate you. An American child would say, North American, Mom, I hate you. We never say it, but they can say it. But that is to become cruel, to become kind. So sometimes Bhagavan may appear to be cruel, to teach us some lessons in their own kindness. So have Shraddha in the benevolence of Ishvara, in kindness of everything. The basic reality is goodness and kindness. Let us not lose that faith. Otherwise it's difficult to live life. So what is the faith? That is in the core of everything, goodness and kindness. It is true that we have to explore and manifest it. True. For that we need to work. But it's there for us to tap. So this trust or Shraddha helps us to tap these positive things in our life. If you don't have that, then life becomes very negative. So on this Mother's Day, may you all enjoy Ishvara's grace. Let us get the right kind of thinking, right understanding, so right values, right actions, and happiness. You all be happy, healthy, happy. Because you've done great, you offered the world great things. And that privilege men do not have. The privilege that a woman, a mother has. We congratulate you, bless you with all the best. And before we conclude, if there are any questions?